if we can stop focusing on the problem and start praising God, the problem a lot of times will take care of itself. Because a lot of times we turn the anthill into a mountain, right? Because we start focusing on it and blow it up in our faces. But if we focus on God and start praising God, if it is demonic, a lot of times the devil's going to flee from it. We're in Psalms 9 and 10. And I put a little note on the board here. It says that Psalms 9 and 10 may have originally been written as one psalm together. If you look at Psalms 10, there's no heading to it. And then I actually pull up the, I learned my computer can do a new trick. So this is the Greek Septuagint. Go ahead and scroll to the bottom.
What do you call it, the Greek what?
Septuagint. So this is the original Greek translation of the Hebrew Old Testament. This was done this is what the apostles and stuff were quoting. That's how far back this goes. So notice there's 39 verses to the Psalm 9. Now click on the Hebrew Old Testament and scroll down. There's 21 verses.
Those people are weird. They read the wrong way.
Yeah. So now in the original Hebrew and in the Greek Septuagint, I don't think there were actually verses. We didn't have chapters and verses when a lot of this stuff was written. The one difference in that is the Psalms, because the Psalms were numbered, even in the Old Hebrew. So you had Psalm 1, Psalm 2, Psalm 3. As far as like most of the New Testament, those are letters that were written to people. And so you wouldn't write, Dear Aunt May, or chapter 1, Dear Aunt May, verse 2, I'm so glad you're alive. How are the kids doing? Verse 3, you wouldn't do that, right? And so that's the way a lot of the stuff was written. The chapter and verse delineations came along later. Just in Psalms, they're originally numbered. I'm not sure why the Septuagint combined the two, other than that there's talk about how they're both acrostic and one kind of follows the other. So if that's the case, then why did they separate them in the modern Bibles? I don't know. Other than like the Hebrew, it's actually separated in the original Hebrew.
What does acrostic mean?
It follows the letters of the Hebrew alphabet.
Okay.
It's the way they did their poetry. So if you were to look up like the Latin Vulgate and any Bibles that were before the Protestant Revolution, whatever, they would have Psalms 9 and 10 together. And then all the modern translations have them separated. What's weird though, is if you were to look at one of those Bibles and count the number of Psalms, there's still 150 Psalms. What happens is there's another place where the same thing happened where the Greek combined them and the modern translations separated them. But then later on, the reverse happened to where the Greek had separated them and the modern ones put them together. So in the end, you end up with 150 Psalms. So if you're ever looking up a reference to a verse, like the Lord is my shepherd, right? You might see something like Psalm 23, and it'll be in brackets 22. And what that's telling you is it depends on which translation you're looking it up in. If you're looking it up in one of the older, like the Vulgate, it's Psalm 22. If you look up the modern one, it's 23.
Who's yours, Michael?
His is King James. He'll have the same thing, 9 and 10.
Yeah.
So, for that side note, also for these guys, you guys are watching this stuff on videos. I'm going to start splitting the Psalms videos up into two.
Why?
Because someone might be researching and they just want to look up Psalm 9 or Psalm 10 or something like that. And they got to rewatch the whole video, which is 45 minutes long.
Okay.
So I'm going
There's no way to put like chapter markers in your
There is. I need to figure that out. I don't know how to do that yet. But in the meantime, they'll still go out on the same Sunday. It's just be 2 different videos on the same Sunday. So you get 2 for 1 deal. It's good.
If you add them to a playlist, it doesn't matter for anyone that just wants to listen to them.
Yeah. So anyway, with that, we will take these in 2 separate Psalms. Psalm 9 first. We'll read through it and then go back and kind of pick it apart a little bit. For the director of music, to the tune of the death of a son, a psalm of David. I will give thanks to you, Lord, with all my heart. I will tell of all your wonderful deeds. I will be glad and rejoice in you. I will sing the praises of your name, Most High. My enemies turn back. They stumble and perish before you. For you have upheld my right and my cause, sitting enthroned as a righteous judge. You have rebuked the nations and destroyed the wicked. You have blotted out their name forever and ever. Endless ruin has overtaken my enemies. You have uprooted their cities. Even the memory of them has perished. The Lord reigns forever. He has established his throne for judgment. He rules the world in righteousness and judges the peoples with equity. The Lord is a refuge for the oppressed, a stronghold in times of trouble. Those who know your name trust in you, for you, Lord, have never forsaken those who seek you. Sing the praises of the Lord enthroned in Zion. Proclaim among the nations what he has done. For he who avenges blood remembers. He does not ignore the cries of the afflicted. Lord, see how my enemies persecute me. Have mercy and lift me up from the gates of death, that I may declare your praises in the gates of daughter Zion, and there rejoice in your salvation. The nations have fallen into the pit they have dug. Their feet are caught in the net they have hidden. The Lord is known by his acts of justice. The wicked are ensnared by the work of their hands. The wicked go down to the realm of the dead, and all the nations that forget God. But God will never forget the needy. The hope of the afflicted will never perish. Arise, Lord, do not let mortals triumph. Let the nations be judged in your presence. Strike them with terror, Lord. Let the nations know they are only mortal. So starting right off with the title, because your Bible may see something different. Michael, can you read the title?
On 9.
Yeah, in the King James.
To the chief musician upon Muth Laban, a psalm of David.
Yeah, the Muth Laban or Muth Laban, they're not really clear on how to translate that. I don't know why for sure. I know there's debate that this could mean death of the son.
That's what mine says.
But no one really knows what it actually means. So it could have something to do with his running from Saul. It could mean a lot of different things. But the Muth Laban, was it? Muth Laban.
It's got 2 B's.
That's how it's written in the original Hebrew. We're just not sure exactly the translation.
The transliteration.
Yeah.
Okay.
So it starts off, he's very happy. Again, this is David we're talking about. He's giving thanks to God with all his heart. He's telling him his wonderful deeds. He's going to be glad. He's going to rejoice. And it sounds happy, but he could actually be, he's having problems with his enemies. But a lot of times when we are having, I'm going to turn this off. A lot of times when we're having what we perceive as problems, it could be brought on by demonic forces or whatever. It could just be social anxieties, whatever. If we can stop focusing on the problem and start praising God, the problem a lot of times will take care of itself. Because a lot of times we turn the anthill into a mountain, right? Because we start focusing on it and blow it up in our faces. But if we focus on God and start praising God, if it is demonic, a lot of times the devil's going to flee from it. And so he's looking back on his life. Verse 3, my enemies turn back, they stumble and perish before you. For you have upheld my right and my cause. So he's thinking about all the times in his life where his enemies have come against him and God's done some work to take care of it. You've rebuked the nations and destroyed the wicked. You have blotted out their name forever and ever. This doesn't mean that the wicked are totally erased or will be totally forgotten. It's kind of a generalization. Granted, there's probably a lot of people that he's thinking about that we don't know about anymore, so it is possible they were blotted out forever. Endless ruin has overtaken my enemies. You have uprooted their cities. Even the memory of them has perished. And he keeps on just praising God. The Lord reigns forever. He's established his throne for judgment. He rules the world in righteousness and judges the peoples with equity. So he's focusing on who God is. Like I said before, when we're facing those problems, we need to remember that God is greater than the problems. The Lord is a refuge for the oppressed, a stronghold in times of trouble. So how do you think the Lord is a refuge?
Texas?
Yeah, we go to him when we need. He gives us what we need.
He's my rock.
Yeah.
He's your rock.
Fortress.
We need to remember that God is greater than our problem. He's greater than our enemies. He's greater than anything else that could be going on. And so we can seek refuge in that and then comfort in that. Know that he will protect us one way or another.
Kind of makes me think we make a mountain out of a molehill and he makes a molehill out of a mountain.
Yeah.
And even when you're really upset and sad, if you start singing a song or you start thinking about him, you find your
Yeah, you lift your
happiness
spirits up.
and find
Yeah.
your joy. Yeah.
Yep. Those who know your name trust in you, for you, Lord, have never forsaken those who seek you. I think that's going along with verse 9. We seek refuge in him. If you know who God is, you can seek refuge in him. People who deny that God exists, there's no refuge for them. They,
It is
Yeah.
really sad.
That's why they take drugs.
they,
Take
yeah.
their life.
Yeah.
Or put commercials on TV about join the atheists.
Okay.
Gosh.
Those who know your name trust in you, for you, Lord, have never forsaken those who seek you.
So, okay, here, I'm not going to be forsaken.
Right.
I seek it. I'm not going to be forsaken.
No,
And that's-
not.
It's a hard, you know.
There's another aspect. So we're all believers in here, but there's another aspect here. If a person who's not a believer yet, if they do seek out God, he's not going to forsake them.
So,
Oh,
what
I
if
love that.
you believe in God, but you're not seeking after him?
We're going to hit that in Psalm 10 too.
Oh, okay.
That's a lot of people.
We call that practical atheists.
You call it what?
Practical atheism. Verse 11. Sing the praises of the Lord enthroned in Zion. Proclaim among the nations what he has done. For he who avenges blood remembers. He does not ignore the cries of the afflicted. For he who avenges blood remembers. Cain and Abel. That's probably the first one in the Bible that comes to mind. When Cain slew Abel, Abel's blood, it says Abel's blood cried out from the ground. God doesn't forget that. So a lot of the people are I don't know if that's a good word. They're committing violent acts thinking that there is no God. And they may not be just violent acts, it could be other things too. But they think that the Lord's not watching, that he doesn't care because nothing is immediately happening to him. But God does remember these things. It will come back on them eventually.
What if we ask him not to remember it?
If you ask for forgiveness, that is a way of breaking this. As far as your salvation is concerned. You might still have to pay for your actions here on earth, but you're secure in heaven. So yeah, God will remember these acts that you're committing, especially if you're committing it against his people. In our case, Christians. Like what's going on with ISIS and that, it'll come back on them.
What goes around comes around.
Yeah. Verse 13, Lord, see how my enemies persecute me. So he's kind of shifting the tone of his prayer now, or his song, either way. But see how my enemies persecute me. Have mercy and lift me up from the gates of death, that I may declare your praises in the gates of daughter Zion, and there rejoice in your salvation. So he's drawing on his previous memories of all these times that God's helped him to bring it into this situation. Like, Lord, this is looking really desperate right now, but I know you can do this. And so he's David was very good at that. When he went up against Goliath, or right before he did, King Saul was trying to put his own armor on David. And David's going, I don't need your armor. He says, God's protected me from I think he says the bear and the lion. He'll protect me from this Philistine. So he's very good at looking back on his life saying, God did this. I know he'll do this here. And we can do the same thing with our lives. You see God work in an area of your life, you take comfort knowing that he'll do it again.
I also feel like it kind of solidifies it when you write things down too.
Yeah, if you can keep a journal of things, because especially as we get older, our minds start, forgetting a few things.
You don't have to be older to do that, Scott.
No, you do not. You just gotta make room for the new stuff, and the old stuff just gets chucked for a little bit.
Yeah. They did this is probably off topic, but they did a study with college students, like testing IQs. And the ones that scored higher on their tests had lower IQs. And they figured it was because they were cramming all the knowledge in there that the brain didn't have the capacity for the processing of that knowledge. Because they're too busy, memorizing all the details about whatever subject they were on. They didn't really have the capacity to process the information in order to. That's what the IQ test is, how well you can process abstract information.
Okay. Crammed too full, there was no room.
Yeah, their database was overloaded, whatever. Okay, verse 15. The nations have fallen into the pit they have dug. Their feet are caught in the net they have hidden. The Lord is known by his acts of justice. The wicked are ensnared by the work of their hands. Those two kind of go together. So these nations that were rising up against him, maybe they were trying to set a trap for him, and they've fallen into their own trap. I read this, I picture like the old Roadrunner cartoons with Wile E. Coyote. Wile E. Coyote is always setting a trap, and he's always getting hit by his own trap somehow, blowing up in his face, running into a wall, whatever. It's the same thing here. The wicked are trying to cause some sort of harm, and it's coming back on them.
There's also, in our Bible at 16, the end says, Higayon Selah.
It says Selah.
It does say Selah, and it also says Higayon, which
The
means...
Hebrew is Hegion and Selah, words of uncertain meaning. Okay.
Well, it says here that that Higayon means meditation. Meditation.
Okay.
Yeah.
I wondered about that as well.
Okay, so that would make sense if he's singing this, think about, meditate on this, think about it. So think about the way your actions are affecting other people. Are you setting out to cause harm to someone because it's probably going to come back on you? We don't see that meditate much anymore. People don't want to take time and really think and ponder about stuff. We want to have someone else tell us what we should think.
You always want instant gratification.
Yeah, I mean, that's...
Yeah, been thinking about that. It's a lot of people here are, not here, I mean, just in general, they're insight junkies.
Yeah.
They want bottom line right now, okay, next one.
Yep.
And put it all together, and they don't dwell on it, they just have all these different things and different facts in their head, but they never did a deep study.
Our entire world is that way right now. Everything has to be instant.
No, at least in America.
Yeah. Well, yeah, that's true.
The other part of that is your actions do affect a lot of people. And I've been thinking that a lot lately, like, every little thing that you do, a big thing, your decisions, they affect a lot of other people, not just yourself.
We affect people around us, I think, a lot more than we realize.
Yeah, we do.
And we can affect them in a positive way, we can affect them in a negative way.
Even just being happy or upset.
Even if you're just smiling.
Yeah.
So me as a pastor, If I come in here and I'm having a bad day and I'm grumpy and grouchy, it's going to set the tone for everyone in here, probably for the rest of the day.
Yeah.
If I come in all happy and bubbly, you might wonder what's wrong with me, but at least you guys can be bubbly. I think we're on verse 18. But God will never forget the needy. The hope of the afflicted will never perish. This was something that God tried to ingrain into the Jewish people, and it kind of lost its place somewhere along the way. There were provisions in the law for the widows and the orphans on how to take care of them. And somehow, down the road, they lost that to where it became more about what I can do for myself. And
Sure, all the nations around Israelites, they didn't care about the widows or
no,
the orphan. They just
The-
thought of them as the trash, you know.
the general culture for the Romans and the Greeks, if you didn't make it yourself, you weren't worth anything, basically.
Mm-hmm.
Verse 19, arise, Lord, do not let mortals triumph. Let the nations be judged in your presence. Strike them with terror, Lord. Let the nations know they are only mortal. There's a philosopher, I can't remember his name, but he said God created us in his image and then we return the favor. Basically what he's saying is we try to make God out to be like us, which basically puts us either above God or in a place that we really aren't. We are only mortals. We don't have the wisdom, the understanding, the power, anything that God has. And so that's the things what he's saying here is let the nations know that they aren't you. They're not the ones in control. And what I'm saying, strike them with terror. It's, put the fear of God in them, basically.
I'm just real concerned about our kids today. There are so many kids that don't have any idea about God. They don't even know they're not even raised with the Bible in their house.
So tell them about it.
Well, I'm thinking of
If all of us Christians
I know what you mean.
would learn to talk to other people and witness to other people and get the boldness to do it, because I think that's where a lot of it comes in and people are afraid to share their faith anymore, then those kids would learn who God is. But there are still.
You can't say when you're working for the government.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So I said, so we need boldness, we need openings. But yeah, there are adults in this country who have not heard of Jesus. I know a new evangelist, he's passed on now, but he was talking about how he would talk to some people and they'd never even heard of Jesus. It's like, how can you not have heard of Jesus in some way or another? But they really had no clue.
I definitely have a hard time understanding that since I was, raised in the church. It's like, how do you not know about Jesus when it's like, I have been talked to him about him all my life.
Yep.
So it's a foreign concept to me.
But there's families where the kids are raised thinking that Christians are a cult or what have you, and that should be avoided and don't listen to anything they have to say type of thing because they're just going to poison your mind. That's what they're taught.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah.
It does come back down to being the salt and the light. He does take people to those places. I think that both me and my husband are always put around a bunch of unbelievers on a regular basis. And I'm sure that that's true very often, that there's somebody around
Oh, most
that
of
God will use, for a moment at least.
both the nurses that I work with at work are not believers.
So God probably put you there,
Yeah.
You never know.
I got like 5 minutes to do Psalms 10 in, so I think I'm going to save that for
For the next time.
the next time. So instead of having this go out the same time as Psalm 10, it'll be 2 weeks apart.
That's fine.
What does a non-believer believe in?
That
So we're talking, let's define non-believer as atheist then, because there's a lot of different types of non-believers. They believe that everything happened randomly, and we're all basically just molecules, and when you're done, that's it.
Yep.
Which they are starting to realize, at least in their philosophical circles, that there's an issue there, because without having a a moral standard, you can't really have a society. I'm not getting the words right on this. But we can't, if we all just happened, if everything around us and us ourselves just happened as random things, then what I do to somebody else would have
No repercussions.
no repercussions. I could basically walk all over the week, claw my way to the top, stab whoever I want to in the back, because there's no repercussions.
Mhm.
And that's where the atheist philosophers are starting to see that there's an issue. They're not willing to admit yet that there's a God, but they are seeing that there needs to be a moral standard. So you guys were talking about trying to reach kids that have no concept of Jesus. The thought comes to mind of Paul. When he was, I want to say Athens, when he was in Athens,
The Greek statue.
he spoke to the philosophers of his time, all the great thinkers of his time. These were not Christians. These were not even Jewish people. They would have been involved in the different gods and stuff of their culture. But he found a connection through what they referred to as the unknown God. And he was able to speak to them through that. If you guys pray about reaching these kids, I'm sure God will give you an opening to where you can talk to them. And he will show you something that you can use as a tangible thing to reach these kids.